Let's bring you to this now. There are mixed views on the passing of the Electoral Matters Amendment Bill in the National Assembly. The proposed law, which still needs to be voted on in the National Council of Provinces, seeks to change the funding formula for political parties and independents. A number of opposition parties are threatening legal action, claiming the changes will favor the ANC. Let's speak about this now with the Freedom Front Plus Chief Whip, Dr. Corne Mulder, whose party, by the way, has voted against this bill. Dr. Mulder, thank you for your time. Let's begin first with a broad understanding of what the Electoral Matters Amendment Bill speaks to in very simple language for a viewer who's interacting with this information for the first time. How would you explain it?
I would explain it in the following manner. There was a court case in the Constitutional Court that decided that independents should be allowed to participate in elections. And in order to make that possible, certain amendments need to be made to certain legislation, which we understand. And everybody supports that, and that is fine. But what happened in this instance is that the ANC decided to amend the law and also deal with the question of the funding of political parties. Now, there's no need to do that. There was no instruction by the Constitutional Court to talk about the funding of independents. And the whole question of funding of political parties is handled by Section 236 in the Constitution. So what happens here basically is that the ANC, under the guise of trying to accommodate independents to participate in the election, has now used or misused this opportunity to quickly try and change the funding formula so that it can benefit the ANC. And there's no doubt that it will benefit the ANC. The figures are quite clear. They will get a further about 40 million rand, and all other parties will lose out.
What was the necessity of this law in the first place?
There was no necessity whatsoever to touch anything with regard to party political funding. The ANC is trying to do that by the argument that independence now needs to be funded. That's absolute rubbish. The fact is the Constitutional Court said we must make provision to allow them to participate in the election. We don't know if any single independent will be elected. And once we've got that, we can look at that. But the problem still is we are bound by the provisions of Section 236 in the Constitution. And Section 236 clearly states that funding deals with political parties. There's not a single word in there that has any reference to any independent candidate or independent elected.
What if the argument came that says, but we have to prepare in advance for what clearly is an electoral system that is evolving?
No, definitely not. Then you'll have to change the Constitution. You cannot bring legislation that is in direct conflict with the provisions of the Constitution. Then first you need to change the Constitution. The ANC knows that. Section 236 does not assist them in this manner. And the reality is, if independents are elected, which I very much strongly doubt that they will get elected, there are other methods to do that kind of funding because all members of Parliament are, in terms of legislation and agreements and rules of Parliament, entitled to a constituency allowance, to assist them to have an office, etc., etc. We first need to see if that happens, but that even if it happens, you cannot circumvent the provisions of the Constitution itself that does not refer to this at all. This is the guise used by the ANC of independence, but what they did was now they also just changed the formula of funding, which is so laughable exactly in terms of the ANC's. It's desperation from a party that knows that they're going to lose power and trying to grab some more money, 40 million, quickly before the election. We will not allow that. We will not tolerate that.
You have voted against the passing of this bill in the National Assembly. The understanding now is that it is going to move, as with all legislation, to the National Council of Provinces to be voted there. So, in essence, it has passed in the National Assembly. Is there a way to stop the train?
Well, not at the moment. The ANC is on their little folly. I warned the minister yesterday in the debate. You must understand now, the Section 236 says parties must be funded in an equitable and proportional basis. The current law makes provision for a fair distribution by saying 1/3 should be equitable and 2/3 could be proportional. Now the ANC think we're all stupid. They changed it yesterday, that only 10% will be equitable and 90% will be proportional. So I warned the ANC yesterday that when we approach the court, we'll ask the court to interpret Section 236, and the Constitution clearly says equitable and proportional. It says first equitable. It doesn't say mainly proportional. We'll be asking for a 50-50 split, and the party that will lose out will be the ANC. Now the process goes to the NCOP. There's nothing one can do in the meantime. Let it go to the NCOP. Let's see if the ANC has listened. Let's see if they have learned anything. If they don't, the NCOP will pass it. Then it will go to the President. We will appeal to the President not to sign something that is unconstitutional. We may take certain steps to prevent the President. But if he proceeds, we will then obviously have to take other measures, and that will bring the legal process into being. But the problem is it may jeopardize the election date. And that is what we warned the ANC about. They put all the things in the same bill, accommodating independents to participate, but also the funding thing. We warned them. We said, don't put this in the same bill. But obviously the ANC, in the state of desperation they are at the moment, did not listen.
Well, on that very point, that this could put in jeopardy the May 29 elections, there is this view that if the Electoral Matters Amendment Bill was not passed in time, it could delay the May 29 election. Make us understand that argument.
No, I agree with that. There's no problem. And everybody was prepared to make provision for the independents as we were instructed to by the Constitutional Court. But the fact is there was no instruction from the Constitutional Court on the one hand, and on the other hand, the Constitution does not make provision for the funding of independence, which is now used as the guise. So everybody was prepared to bring legislation through Parliament to accommodate independence to do what? To participate in the election. But this is not what this is about. The ANC then saw an opportunity to quickly try and change the funding so that they can get their hands on more than 40 million again. And if they really think that the opposition parties will stand for that, or that civil society will stand for that, the ANC is more naive than I thought, but I think it's an act of complete desperation at this stage.
Dr. Corne Mulder is the Chief Whip sitting on the benches of the Freedom Front Plus in Parliament. Thank you very much.